A heavily rusted wrench, completely seized. You drop it into a clear liquid that costs less than $1. You walk away. 12 hours later, you pull it out, wipe it with a paper towel, and the rust is just gone. Bare, shining metal. Factory clean. And the liquid that did it? White vinegar and table salt? $1. That's it. The $30 billion hardware and tool industry has known about this for decades, and they have spent years making sure you never find out. Welcome to the buried blueprint. I'm going to show you exactly how this works, step by step. But first, if you care about uncovering what powerful corporations deliberately hide from everyday Americans, hit subscribe right now and turn on the bell. Because this channel exists for one reason, to hand you back the knowledge they stole. Now let's go back, way back, before the gleaming aisles of Home Depot. Before the branded plastic jugs of chemical rust remover lined up like soldiers on a shelf. Before any of that, there were blacksmiths and armorers. And the early machinists of the 19th century who built the industrial backbone of this country with their bare hands and forged iron, these men could not afford to throw away a tool every time it rusted. And they didn't need to, because they had a secret that every apprentice learned early and every master refined over a lifetime. They called it pickling. They would submerge rusted iron and steel into baths of acidic fruit liquids, heavy and natural acids, combined with dense sea salt. They would leave the metal to soak. And when they pulled it out, the rust was chemically dissolved. Not scrubbed, not painted over, dissolved at the molecular level. The metal was restored, reborn, ready to forge and work with again. Swords were maintained this way. Armor, railroad components, early automotive parts in the very first machine shops of America. This was not folklore. This was industrial chemistry, practiced and proven for well over a century. So what happened? Why don't you know about this? Why is your garage full of rusted tools you gave up on? Or old car parts you threw away because you thought they were finished? Here is the exact moment it changed. In the 1960s, and especially through the 1970s, large chemical manufacturers began rushing to patent and bottle industrial rust-removing compounds. They created entire product lines, rust converters, rust neutralizers, rust encapsulants. They put them in heavy branded packaging, they pushed them into hardware stores. They trained sales staff to upsell them. And then they spent millions in marketing to convince you that rust was a monster you could not fight without their products. They never told you that the active chemical reaction inside most of those $20 plastic jugs is nearly identical to what a 19th century blacksmith made from kitchen ingredients. Because here is the brutal truth. You cannot patent vinegar. You cannot patent table salt. There is no repeat revenue model in telling someone to go to the grocery store and spend 99 cents. So they buried it. Quietly, methodically, and profitably. Today, contractors will charge you hundreds of dollars to restore rusted outdoor hardware. Auto restoration shops will quote you thousands to treat rust on classic vehicle parts. And the hardware store is happy to sell you a new set of tools the moment you decide your old ones are beyond saving. Every single one of those transactions depends on you not knowing what you're about to learn. Before I give you the exact formula and the precise method, I need to tell you something important. This rust secret is just one chapter in a much larger story of buried knowledge. The complete buried blueprint vault is linked in the description below. It contains dozens of classified home, survival, and DIY guides covering everything from off-grid energy to waterproofing to structural repair. Knowledge that corporations and contractors have every financial incentive to keep away from you. Check it out. But stay right here, because exactly how you apply this changes everything, and getting it wrong can actually damage your metal instead of saving it. Quick safety note before we go further, because I want you to trust this process completely. White vinegar is a mild acid. It is the same acid you put on your salad. However, when you combine it with salt and leave it in an enclosed space, it can produce fumes that are irritating to breathe in large concentrations. Work in a ventilated area. Keep it away from your eyes. Do not use it in a sealed room, and critically, do not use it in a metal container. The acid will attack the container itself. Use plastic, always. Now let's talk about why this actually works, because understanding the science makes you confident in the result. Rust is iron oxide. It is what happens when iron in your metal bonds with oxygen in the presence of moisture. It is essentially your metal slowly converting itself into a crumbling, reddish compound that has none of the strength of the original steel. Commercial rust removers work by throwing a stronger acid at the problem and hoping the reaction stops before it eats into the healthy metal. But here is what makes the vinegar and salt solution different. When acetic acid, which is the active compound in white distilled vinegar, combines with sodium chloride, which is ordinary table salt, it produces a mild, targeted chemical environment that does something remarkable. It specifically attacks the oxygen bonds within the iron oxide molecules. It dissolves rust, it breaks it apart at the molecular level. But because the healthy, unoxidized steel beneath the rust has a completely different chemical composition, the solution has very little appetite for it. It is precise, it is selective. It strips the rust without aggressively eating the metal underneath. That is something a lot of commercial converters actually fail to do. They attack indiscriminately and leave your metal pitted and weakened. This solution works with the chemistry of the metal, not against it. Here is the exact process. Step 1. Go to any grocery store and buy a 1-gallon jug of white distilled vinegar. Do not buy apple cider vinegar. Do not buy cleaning vinegar in a different formulation. Standard, plain, white, distilled vinegar. The cheap store brand is perfectly fine. You also need ordinary table salt. Not kosher salt, not sea salt, not iodized if you can avoid it, plain table salt. That is your entire shopping list. Total cost, roughly $1. Maybe a little more depending on your area. Step 2. Find a plastic container large enough to fully submerge the rusted item. A plastic storage bin works perfectly. A large bucket works. A heavy-duty plastic bag sealed tight can work for smaller pieces. Never use a metal container. Step 3. Pour the entire gallon of white vinegar into your container. Add 1 cup of table salt and stir it thoroughly until the salt is fully dissolved. The solution will look completely clear, almost like water. That is correct. Step 4. Submerge the rusted metal completely in the solution. Every rusted surface must be underwater. If parts are sticking out, add more vinegar. Step 5. Let it sit. For light surface rust, 8 to 12 hours is usually enough. For heavy rust, severe corrosion, tools that have been sitting in a damp garage for years, give it a full 24 hours. You can check it at the 12-hour mark and see the progress. You will notice the liquid turning orange and brown as the dissolved rust releases from the metal. That is exactly what you want to see. Step 6. Pull the item out. Using gloves, wipe the surface with a rough cloth or even a stiff brush. The rust should come off with minimal effort. Wipe it, scrub it lightly, and watch it come clean. Step 7, and this is critical, do not skip this step. Rinse the metal thoroughly and immediately with clean water. You need to neutralize and stop the acid reaction completely. Once it is rinsed, dry it as fast as possible, because bare clean metal will begin to flash rust very quickly when exposed to air. Step 8. Immediately coat the cleaned metal with a light oil. WD-40 is fine, mineral oil is fine, any light machine oil works. This creates a barrier between the fresh metal surface and the oxygen in the air, protecting it until you can decide how you want to finish, paint, or seal it permanently. Let that sink in for a second. A $1 solution just did what a $20 bottle of commercial rust remover promises to do and often fails to deliver. It did what a contractor would charge you $300 for. It saved tools you were ready to throw in the trash. It saved car parts, outdoor furniture brackets, fence hardware, workshop equipment. Everything you spent money on over a lifetime that rust was quietly destroying. And the industry that profits from your rusting tools and your deteriorating hardware and your need to buy new replacements. They pray every single day that you never learn this. They are counting on you scrolling past this video. They are counting on you heading back to the hardware store instead. Do not give them that. Share this video right now with anyone you know who has a garage full of rusted tools or an old project they gave up on. And subscribe to this channel, because we are just getting started. The next blueprint opens soon. And what's inside is even heavier.